You're strong.
I know.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy, the currently most popular show on Comics League. I'm Jared. I'm here as usual with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hi, how you doing?
So today we're gonna do a little fun exercise here. So Britt and I are both writers, and we decided let's take a couple of DC stories that either teased Super Wonder or had nothing to do with it, and rewrite them to be more Super Wonder heavy. So I made my usual awesome PowerPoints, and Britt's stories go first, so I guess she's going first. So let's get started. So your first one was Immortal Beloved, arguably one of the most infuriating of the teases in DC's publication history.
Right, because this story is basically about well, when they did the marriage, that pretty much closed the door on any other relationship. But at the same time, I think a year after the marriage, they wanted to end it.
Mhm.
So, but for some reason, they kept it, and with editorial and the writers going back and forth, it was, well, we want this relationship, we want that relationship, or we want to stick to the marriage. So with this one, this story is basically trying to close the door on Clark and Diana. Um, and it really pretty much opened the door even more to
Mhm.
me because in the beginning it shows the how dysfunctional, Lois and Clark is, with Lois being jealous, with Clark, he doesn't trust her, but he trusts Diana, and he is basically voicing that. I don't like that the story is mostly in his point of view because, of course, they don't want Diana's. She was basically like a plot device to show this, loyalty thing. So, how I would rewrite it, you can have everything from the beginning, but that ending of that night that they were, last night,
Mhm.
we might die, just let them talk about their feeling because they already wrote themselves in a corner with they will go back to their present time or whatever.
Mhm.
So you don't want like a cheating story. You wouldn't want that.
Because
So
Superman would not cheat.
right. So what you want to do though is just let them talk it out. Is that yeah, I do have feelings, but of course I'm married or something like that. But we do have this friendship that I, cherish, and but I do have, underlying feelings for you.
Mhm.
Just be mature about it. And I do like that some writers did take this and it was brought up in some way. It was either brought up to say, oh, we, was here for 1,000 years and he's loyal to you, or it was I think Meeks mocked it. It was like, you're dumb for doing that,
Mhm.
or, and then it was something like a regret that it didn't happen.
I could
I would,
imagine also if he tells the story to like the Justice League. I could see like Billy or Hal going, and you said no?
right. So I would go for the third option, which is just, I think it was a Christmas special, and he
Mhm.
gives Diana a Christmas gift.
Oh yeah, the hammer thing where
Yeah,
it's like one of the sexiest panels in all of
right.
comics.
And it's like it's a just remember that time. It's not, it doesn't have to be that we went all out intimate like that, but it's an acknowledgement of their feelings. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's pretty much how I would rewrite it, is that yeah, everything stay the same, but be more mature about opening up that yes, we can't have them explicitly together, or they can't be together because of the marriage, but we do acknowledge that they do have feelings, because that's what real people would do.
Yeah, because here's the thing about that story, that ending. Here's the thing about it. It's completely dismissive to it, and at that point, like even Clark says, "Yeah, we've been here for 1,000 years. Lois is probably dead, but no, it'll always be Lois." And I'm like, "You just told me she's
Yeah,
always. You just told me she's dead. You have a best friend who clearly wants to be with you. There's nothing standing in the way, bro."
right. And it's clear that he has feelings for her too. It's like
Oh,
you're
yes.
forgetting about Lois and everything. So just, just take that chance. But it the it's basically like writing yourself in a corner though, because again, we know that they were going to go back to their
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they really couldn't do anything further because again, it will lead to a cheating story.
But at least that's why I like what you would do is like at least just have them acknowledge that they have feelings for each other because in this one they didn't do that. Don't tell me that they weren't like hyping up they have feelings for each other because they're intimately staring at each other before they have this conversation. I'm like, yeah, so either something's going to happen, which would be a cheating story, or they're thinking, wow, she's really beautiful. I'm like, there's no way you can't tell me something was going on there.
Right. It's always a bait and switch. This is one of those examples of a bait and switch.
Oh no, DC baiting and switching the viewers? They would never do that. Wow. Next up, Final Days of Superman. Okay, so this was one of the stories that annoyed the hell out of me with Rebirth and this is why Jay Heat and I did the new direction because they had the opportunity to make both sides of the fan base happy with having the older Superman be with Lois and be less popular, and the new 52 one be with Diana and be infinitely more popular. But no, they said, "Nah, we're just gonna cater to the people that clearly don't read comics."
Right. So that is one of I think the worst decisions that they made because okay, first, regardless of how the Superman and Wonder Woman book was, well, because of the creative decisions of Tomasi, the book's sales started to dwindle.
Mm-hmm.
But it still maintained a good level.
Mm-hmm.
But the Convergence book, the spinoff book, that debuted 30K and just kept going down. Even though they, promoted it as the original power couple, as the most anticipated book, it still didn't do, what they wanted to do, succeed. So if you have you fans asking for the classic status quo to come back, but they show that they aren't supporting it at all, you know. So right here, just like how you said, they should have one with the quote unquote classic status quo and then the new 52. How I would have done that was if he had to die, let him die, the whole thing. But do what we how we spoke on last week of how have Diana make a deal with the gods and how they would I guess pay that debt is that they will go on adventures in
Mm-hmm.
other worlds. So you can have your classic status quo still on Earth, but this new 52 status quo is in another dimension, dealing with godly type stuff.
I
Or
dig that.
they both ascend. That's something that I think would have been more interesting, especially because these new 52 versions were more into the mythical, gods and um, more sci-fi type thing. Just play on that, and that's how you pretty much, um, split the status quo.
I would love for like Zeus to go to Apollo. Okay, revive Diana's boyfriend. And he's like, "Do I have to? The dude punched me through a volcano."
Right.
I would so call, because that, again, I say this every week, that is my favorite panel in the entire series.
I really wanted that round 2 of that fight. And that's one way I was thinking that they already see him as he's not a god, but he's not mortal. But he still sort of have a place there. And you have that competition of Apollo versus Clark, and who is, a rightful like sun god. And he goes on missions for them to prove himself. And then he has Diana right there with him too, because that's her world. So it's basically the same as the first book with Soul, but you pretty much moving more towards Diana's world, which would be ideal.
Yep, 100%. And it shows again that they work in each other's world, because that's the problem. That is a difficulty when it comes to pairing superheroes together, because you have to make sure that they can both work in each other's worlds, because inevitably he's going to cross over to her side of the field. He's going to cross over to she's going to cross over to his side. So you have to make sure that works. Fortunately, with these two, they work on either side of the field. So
right.
So Superman and Wonder Woman issues 13 by 17 by Peter J. Tomasi. Oh boy. This was the less egregious story in this series that he wrote compared to his other stuff.
It had lots of potential. I loved Wonder Star, like the design and the mystery. But when he decided to basically tell, do the reveal already that he's not their son, he's not, whatever. I mean, that would have been a very interesting storyline. You named him Wonder Star. I mean, Wonder for Wonder Woman, Star, as moon and stars and the sun. So that makes sense to be their son. But having him as Magog, I mean, that, because you want to do an homage to Kingdom Come, that's still very much overplayed to me. So if you wanted him to be a kid that ended up with, he did good with bringing in Cersei and that whole thing, that was good. But Magog, you could have took that out. Could have just been a kid, and they at the end should have been a mentorship. Or adopted him or something like that, that I would have written it that way, that he is resentful for the Justice League. He did lose his parents and his family. So how Clark and Diana reconcile this is they take him in, that this kid now has superpowers, that he is, emotionally kind of traumatized. So let us help him and become his mentors or adoptive parents,
Hey, Bruce, I got another Robin for you.
No, he's had enough. Give them, give them.
He's had enough, exactly. Oh, emotionally traumatized kid that has powers? Oh, yeah. Hey, Joker, come over here for a second. Sacrifice. Yeah. Okay. This was one of... up until the reaction to her killing, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Again, a lot of the stories that I chose, the first parts are really, really good until that ending of trying to create conflict, So this is one of those, or the bait and switch. It's like she has no other choice. And this is something that in reality a lot of people go through, of making literally life decisions. And she did. So why would you treat her bad and get mad? Yeah, you can have that reaction like, oh my God, my friend just, killed a guy in front of me. But Clark had like no type of remorse and understanding, and it just seems so out of character not to understand
Batman, because of like, you have contingency plans in case someone mind controls the Justice League, Superman especially, and you're upset that under the lasso, he said the only way you're gonna get rid of me is by killing me. So that's where you draw the line.
Right. She had no choice. So with her killing him, I mean, that to me, that is right. I know that it's a lot of that this is one of the controversial discussions that on forums and Twitter they have. But to me, my stance is that she did the right thing. So how I would rewrite it is that is basically, yeah, there's a little tension. There's, the world sees her a little differently. There is going to be a side where it's like she shouldn't have done it. There is going to be a side where yes, she should have.
Oh, the way humanity reacted is 100% on point.
Yeah. So, but at the end of it, that Clark goes to her and he again talks to her like a mature person and understands why she did it, and it's all about her feelings towards this person. And it's like, whether you're my friend or a man that I love, I will, do anything for you. And that's again about understanding and have a talk about it and get through it. But it's kind of like, no, they use this in the sense of trying to show differences between the characters and more so break their friendship than make it stronger.
Which is 100% shameful. But the way I would do this is that, yeah, I would do exactly what you do. I would also have a little piece of dialogue where she kind of goes through a certain amount of guilt, because she would too just go through a little bit of guilt because taking a life is a big thing, and he comforts her saying, "Look, I was shocked before. You did the right thing. Thank you." At least just
Right.
be, like you said, a mature person understands this.
Right.
JLA 26.
Okay, so this story, I don't quite remember all of it, but I know it's a particular storyline of I guess it's the alternate timeline, and they have to the prime Earth
Mm-hmm.
JLA has to save the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to a timeline where Diana and Clark are married, but her Clark dies from Doomsday, and she I guess they ask for her help, and she's like, well, of course I'll help, with the man that I love is alive in the timeline where he's alive. And they are about to tell her that, well, y'all aren't together, but she says it doesn't matter, it's that he's alive. So at the end of that story, since they are already kind of changing the timeline, change it to where he does come back, her Clark comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that would be very
Mm-hmm.
satisfying for her. And it's also part of, I think, um this story with McDuffie, is that he was going to have Clark and Diana acknowledge that in another timeline we are together and married.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that that could have, you know if somebody else would have taken it on, to write that, then of course we wouldn't be, wanting to rewrite it. But
Mm-hmm.
how I would do that again is about conversations. Is that just in the multiverse, we are together.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, but this prime Earth, we aren't. We do have feelings, but you're the right person, the wrong time. And maybe in the future we can be together, or to know that we are together in another timeline on another Earth. It kind of gives us this closure.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah, you can even have dialogue where Clark says, "I've been to a lot of worlds throughout
Yeah,
my journey, a lot of multiverse worlds, and in all of them, I'm not with Lois. I'm with you." So
yeah. I think that would be just so sweet.
yeah, it would. So our world's at war. All right.
Okay, so this is uh where well, I guess, world's at war, and uh he should have left Lois after this storyline,
Mm-hmm.
because this is when he goes, Diana's she's injured,
Mm-hmm.
and his sole focus is on her, is getting her help. He ignores everything. He even ignores Lois calling him to get to Diana. And this is where he takes her to Hippolyta and he tells her, help her because she's my best friend. Then I think afterwards, this is when Hippolyta, she takes on the role to fight. And he comes back and he thinks that it's Diana that's dying, but it's actually Hippolyta. And after that storyline, I guess Lois feels jealous and she has resentment towards him because Clark chose to save who he thought was Diana instead of Lois's
Of course,
dad.
because it's Lois Lane.
Right. So this story, I would have, again, it's about acknowledgement of their feelings, especially with Clark. It's like he ignored everything, everyone, just to save Diana because he felt like he was going to lose her. And that is a moment where you realize, okay, this person I can't lose that I do love. So go to her. And then especially with Lois's attitude of you have to be with, do as I say, basically fly, at my beck and call type thing. That's not how you should be. And that's very dysfunctional. It's very, a lot of times it's such miscommunication with them, very dysfunctional with them in their relationship. But here you have, him just wanting to realize that there's somebody else here that not only is fighting with you, but Diana also is his moral compass throughout this whole thing too. She tells him, we have to fight and that it's going to be okay and that, we do what we have to do. That is somebody that you would want at your side. And that is something that, again, should be acknowledged, that move on from Lois, especially with these storylines. It shows so many cracks in that relationship. But again, they show their feelings. They acknowledge it a little bit, but then at the end of the story, they want to belittle it. And that's something that I just cannot stand, because you build this up and you get the readers invested, and then you take it all away. And with these bigger storylines, especially, events and crossovers, you see how their worlds seamlessly, come together. You see even more so with these bigger conflicts of how they are supportive of each other and how they do rely on each other.
Yeah, I dig that.
Yeah. So how this story would go is that he would leave Lois and go with Diana, because it truly shows that at the end of this war, the one that I really have feelings for and the one that was supportive of me was Diana. And another thing, again, they have to have it in Diana's perspective too. A lot of times these stories aren't in her perspective, because if they do have her in her perspective, it's more so of her in a heartbroken stage. Like she's used as a mouthpiece too. It's like, well, just with Immortal Beloved, she had to, I think it was Wonder Woman 170, where Lois is still showing her jealousy and, intimidated by her. And she basically has to pet her and tell her, no, he loves you, not me. I had my chance, and, but that's not the truth, because there's still an underlying feelings. But they have to, again, Diana has to belittle her feelings to, prop up this relationship that obviously has cracks.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, I just want to say, I love how gnarly this art is, with Martian Manhunter's eye like floating in space out of the socket. That is nuts.
Right.
But yes, I do agree with you 100% on all that. I would end it with Clark being like, my friends were floating in space. I'm sorry, without spacesuits. I'm sorry if I didn't run to your beck and call.
Right.
Like, wow. Next one. New Frontier. Yeah, this one was, it's kind of funny. The animated movie, they took away the kiss. I'm really pissed about that.
That was because Bruce Timm.
Oh God, of course.
Yeah, he he did not want that in there at all because it would take away. I mean, he even switched Diana's lines to Lois. It was all to give Lois more of a role, and he didn't want. Yeah, he didn't want Clark and Diana to be as close as they're supposed to be.
Wow. Yet another reason why I'm not a big fan of Bruce Timm.
Right. So with the story, again, everything is fine. The whole beginning part, having it with Diana's monologuing and everything, it's just again the ending is at the end. Clark asks for Lois out of nowhere, and it's kind of like why, like where does that come from? Because the whole story is they do call each other best friend, Diana and Clark. They do have like this conflict, kind of arguments against each other of how they should deal with these, worldly conflicts and stuff. But Diana, again, is right there as his moral compass. She tells him what to do, that this world needs a leader and that you are the one to inspire so many people. And also, I love it that when she calls him my cow, because it's just so, in a sense of a very innocent, sweet possessiveness.
Exactly.
It's very sweet. So she's calling that, and then basically when she's all bloodied and almost quote unquote like a deathbed, she kisses him. And it's like, that's not what friends do.
No, like particularly not that type of kiss. On the lips, no. On the cheek, maybe.
Yeah. And I do love when there's a difference between how she says spaceman too. When she calls him that, it's like, there's the door spaceman when they're in a conflict. And then this is more like in a sense, a very romantic type endearment for her to call him spaceman. So yeah, so this again, perfect story until that very end of he doesn't call for Lois, he calls for Diana or something like that, or just completely take that part out. And they I think it was in a one of Darwin's art books, and it's a very small panel. You can kind of miss it, if you're not paying attention, but it's very small, and they are like walking out a bar together. And I'm like, okay, yeah, this is something you could have had, like an epilogue of the heroes doing an everyday thing, and at night you show that panel of Clark and Diana in uniform or whatever, and they're walking out the Jimmy's bar.
By the way,
something like
here is that panel, by the way. I just want to share that real quick right there.
Yeah. That is, I mean, they have so much that they, like I said, belittle. They build it up and then tear it down.
Exactly. That's the way, and it's kind of funny. Yeah, it's funny how literally the entire theme is the story's great until the end.
Right.
That's hilarious. That's like a lot of what DC does. Wow. Next up, okay, hang on. Let me go to the right screen. Okay, hang on. All right, my picks. Doomsday Clock. All right. So here's how I'm doing this. So this entire series, they kind of like hype it up like they're going. Hang on, I gotta fix this. So they kind of hype it up like they are going to like have Dr. Manhattan and Superman fight, which okay, that works. But then the other thing that they do is, I thought that they were the way I rewrite this is as Dr. Manhattan goes to Superman and he goes, this is not the way it's supposed to be. And then he waves his hand, and then the two Supermen separate back into the two Supermen.
Yes.
And then
We
immediately
totally, yeah.
our boy is like, oh my gosh, Diana. He flies off, and then no, actually the story goes off. They have the same conversation with Dr. Manhattan. But then what occurs is at the end of it, Dr. Manhattan basically goes to classic Superman. He goes, "You belong on your own world," and then he just shuffles him off onto like Earth 2 or whatever. He gives him his own Earth. That's the point. And then what he does is he tells New 52 Superman, "Live your life," and then the epilogue is basically him getting back together with Diana. And you can imagine the reunion after, because obviously he undoes the entire like timeline merging with like Superman Reborn and all that stuff. So you can imagine the reunion between Diana and Clark, like he's back from the dead. Imagine that comic right there.
Yes, that would have been very much ideal, because DC, their history now is so just a mess. So many contradictions to, their own history, and nothing fits. So yeah, this Superman does not belong on this earth that they have right now. Not at
No.
all. So just give him back his earth. Whatever, it was in a bottled city or whatever with the convergence, Telos, whatever it was. Whatever that was, just put it back.
Yeah. The less said about convergence, the better, by the way.
Because that was just so convoluted and everything. I was never interested in those stories anyway, because it was just, trying to do like a nostalgia trip and try to pander to these, nostalgia fans.
The real DC fans.
You can have that. You can have those, greatest hits type thing, but when it messes up the flow of current stories, or like whatever they have now, you can tell it's something wrong. And as a company, I just don't understand, as a company, why you continue to do this. Why do you continue to force things that just don't fit together? And then they want to call it a clutter earth. And it's like, no, it shouldn't be cluttered. That was the point of the reboot in the first place, was to streamline certain things, was to have a clean slate of certain things. Because the thing that a lot of the quote unquote real fans don't want to acknowledge is that before the reboot, DC was in a terrible state.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were not supporting the books. It was messy. And it was just too much going on. So what they wanted to do was just simplify everything. And that makes sense, and be more accessible to newer readers. But now they want to have basically have your cake and eat it too, with the nostalgia of this post-crisis Superman. He really isn't post-crisis, because with John in the mix too, nothing fits. How Death of Superman does not fit into the storyline. Anything else, even Zod's son, Chris, he had to be completely erased, and because that was Clark's adoptive son pre-52. Connor had to be completely erased too. And even though he's back, his story is still so messed up. And even with the rest of the supporting cast, a lot of supporting cast does not interact with John, because it doesn't make sense. You know, they had Perry, I think, as his godfather, but you really do not see that. Jimmy, you barely see that, if at all. You know, nobody has actual genuine interactions because you have to do um, revisionism a lot
Yeah.
to make it make sense, and it still doesn't make sense.
Well, the whole thing, Britt, and going back to the whole point of going back before even Flashpoint, the New 52, the whole reason why they did Crisis on Infinite Earths is because the multiverse is convoluted as hell. So DC has fully acknowledged that their crazy continuity is convoluted. And that's why also in Dark Crisis, one of the things they did, they said, "Don't worry, we're doing away with the whole it's all canon BS." Because I'm like, Wonder Woman alone is the reason why that's a bad idea. Because you're telling me every one of her origins is canon?
Yeah, that even with her debuting in World War II, no, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Especially with her supporting cast because you have them young. If she debuted back then, her supporting cast basically should be dead right now.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, can you imagine a geriatric cheetah?
Yeah.
She's trying to move fast with the walker.
Yeah. Steve, I really don't care for his character, but he definitely
Join the club.
should Steve Jr. It should be Steve Jr. or something like that, or just he should be dead. I mean, he already is like what every week or something he dies. So yeah, he should be long gone. Etta, the way they've done her character, she can be a fun character, but she plays just the generic best friend.
Yeah.
And you know, so I mean, I really don't care for her too much, but she should have some type of, I guess it should be at a, um, she should be either dead or have her great niece or granddaughter or something take over that. If you want, you know, how Diana's origin is. Um, Julia and Vanessa too. I mean,
Mhm.
they've ruined them. You know, every
Yeah.
character that Perez pretty much introduced that gave Diana a solid supporting cast, they've ruined it.
Yeah. If you ever want to see how to properly handle Diana and all of her stuff, look at the Perez run.
Yeah,
And just do not change a single thing. He did it perfectly. But unfortunately, this is DC we're talking about, and they will change a single thing.
yeah.
That's just what DC is. Next up, Injustice. Here's the way this should go. So Clark is like doing his whole building toward the dictatorship. This should have ended in volume 1 because Diana should go to him. And by the way, this would be if Diana was actually the regular Wonder
Written
Woman
in
and not
character.
like an evil person. She would go, Clark, I know you're hurting. I will help you through this, but you cannot continue down this path or it will consume you. In fact, this is one of the good things the Injustice movie did. They had Wonder Woman all of a sudden decide, I've made an enormous mistake.
Well, you know, Injustice is basically like Bizarro Kingdom Come anyway.
Yeah, it is.
So
But I'm just like, there are simple ways that you could avoid this, and Diana could go, I'm going to help you. And then it leads to them being romantically involved down the line after he's finished grieving with Lois. But it's just like, I understand that you are hurting. I've lost people close to me throughout my long existence. But you can't, we're not supposed to be gods, Clark. You and I are not like the gods, thus homaging Justice League 12.
yeah, well, this was even Tom Taylor. He basically said that Diana, her role, if she was written as herself, there wouldn't be a video game. Really, there wouldn't be a video game. There wouldn't be the comics because she wouldn't take either side, or she would try to rehabilitate Clark. She would try to help him, the way that she knows how to, and he wouldn't have turned evil at all.
Mhm.
You know, so they had to make her out to be Macbeth. She had to be the devil on his shoulder. She had to be the true villain, you know, to be to make this story work. And again, all the contrivances and everything, this is what DC does now. They've done it, you know, for a very long time, but it's starting to really show that a lot of the stories are pretty much reliant on these contrivances and turning your brain off to basically say, yeah, this is an Elseworld. You can have the characters different, but this is a total different character. This
Mhm.
isn't even with her origin, her Injustice origin, her the way she is basically the, I guess the Amazons were cruel anyway.
Mhm.
And then she turned on, it really didn't make sense because Steve was a Nazi. So or a spy, you know,
For the
spy or something
Germans.
like
So
that.
yeah, there
Yeah.
you go.
So she killed him and
Mhm.
she felt really bad, and so she never trusted men again. Okay, so how does that go from she doesn't trust men to now she wants this man that she obviously is, I guess, in love with to
Yeah.
become this dictator?
She-
That
She's
those
trusting a man first off with
yeah,
superpowers.
it doesn't correlate at all together.
What they could have done, here's another way to salvage this. Make it so this is Cersei the entire time, and the gods have like Diana like captured somewhere, and Injustice Clark going against the Greek gods saying, "I've held back before. I'm not gonna hold up now. Give me back Diana. I will burn this place to the ground."
Yeah, that totally makes sense for it to be Cersei because it's just not Diana.
Yeah.
You can't, she's just a total different character. There's no way you can have in any else world, you know, even fan fiction writers, they still have a, unless you just like really have this total different headcanon idea of the character, most of the time you are going to stay in line with the core parts of the character.
Particularly
This,
someone like you who actually legit is like practically comics to other page. It's like I was talking to someone else about this, and I'm like, yeah, people like you, people like Hellacre, they don't change you don't change the characters. You just put them in new circumstances, and they react as they would react.
right. Well, thank you first. But
Anytime.
yeah, um that is how you do a story. And yeah, you do want like this especially now with Twitter X, and you want big sales. You do a lot a controversy. You do these shocker type
You won't
panels,
believe what happens in this issue.
but it has to make sense to the character and it can't have them unlikable. I mean, if you wanted the injustice is basically you want superheroes to fight each other,
Mhm.
but it just doesn't work when you have to completely change the characters down to their core. When you take away the core, it's just not the same character. They can have the skin, they can have the name, but it's not the character.
You could have
And
just made it where another thing going on to without changing the core, just make it so Diana never became Wonder Woman and it's just Cersei as Wonder Woman.
yeah, um, I think what was it? It was Bruce Timm, Gods and Monsters,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, but it was Becca
Mm-hmm.
from Apocalypse, I think. Yeah, she
Plus,
was Wonder Woman.
wasn't it also in the Gail Simone Terry Dodson run? Cersei did impersonate Wonder Woman.
Yes, yeah. So there is there. It's just again, you want the real characters, but twist them where you twist them too much to where they aren't the character.
Yeah,
And
again,
yes,
and that's why Tom Taylor does this, where he primarily shines in Elseworlds, because he can twist the characters however he wants. Although it's sometimes he goes a little too far, as in the case of Justice Wonder Woman.
Yeah, I mean, Elseworld, it is putting the characters in different status quos, different circumstances. More, you can, you're not limited. You can do things that are that you wouldn't do in the main line that will be more shocking. Just like with Kingdom Come, that is like just the golden standard, the story to refer, to when doing Elseworlds. Because yes, these characters, they went through just trauma, you know, people died, but and the sadness of it. But at the same time, they did not change the character's core of, yes, you're grieving. Clark was grieving, but he still was that inspirational, aspirational character, leader of the Justice League, hero, overall hero. Diana, she was still, even though they moved more towards her warrior side, she she was frustrated. She was written as a woman, basically like just hurt. But she still was that moral compass. She still was that that voice of reason, though.
Yeah.
Even when she broke, even when she lost everything, she still was a strong fighter. And that contradiction or whatever of fighting for peace. She was the warrior. She, wanted to do what had to be done with no other options or options exhausted. But she still wanted peace. She still wanted to fight for better. That is how you do a story.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. Yeah. And unfortunately, hey, DC, if you're watching this, please hire us. We'll do this for free. So,
well, no, not in this economy.
Yeah, exactly. For a minimal fee, we'll fix your entire damn company at this point.
Right.
Death of Superman. All right. So I love how we both had a Death of Superman in our options. With this one, it would be it would go relatively the same. He's still fighting. Of course, Diana would be fighting alongside him. In other words, I would make it so it's the not crappy Justice League, and
right.
And in other words, like the animated movie did, and then it's him fighting alongside Wonder Woman, and then like that one scene in like the animated movie where Diana's like, "Hold back! If you don't kill him, everyone will die." Keep that. Then the end when he like finally expires, we do essentially do what the animated movie did, except swap out Lois for Diana.
Yeah,
because that was the biggest. When I was watching that movie. Well, actually, when I was watching the marketing, and it's very heavily Clark and Lois, and I didn't even mention Wonder Woman because he was with Wonder Woman at that point, I was confused. And then I literally, Britt, I went full Incredible Hulk when I saw that they broke up off screen.
yes.
I was like, at least show it if you're going to break them up. That's the laziest way to do it. And you could have told this in a new, because the Death of Superman has been told so many different times and so many different pieces of media. You could have done something original with it and had him with Wonder Woman instead of Superman, because she's fought monsters. He's never had to take a life before. He does so. He dies, and then you could do the "what a lucky man I was." That was the twisting of the knife, Britt, when they gave the line that he said to Lois to Diana. When you know what I'm trying to say. That was like they stabbed me in the back, but then they just twisted the knife with that. That's what annoys me when they give Superman and Wonder Woman lines to Superman and Lois. That's what really pisses me off.
Well, yeah. And that, again, is that's the whole point of us, with this rewrite. Because, again, it's showing the cracks in that relationship and how, no, Superman and Wonder Woman isn't perfect. They do have their conflict. but at the same time, it shows very much how a real relationship is supposed to be written. And you don't have to jump through hoops. You don't have to use other characters as mouthpieces. You don't have to switch, you know, this character out for this one. You don't have to do that. And a lot of times, um, trying to give Lois a role, that's what happens, especially in regards to Diana. She cannot be the best friend anymore. She can't be even a friend. They can't, can barely um, even share a uh, panel page together.
Because you saw
And
what happens in Wonder Woman 800 when they clearly look intimate, and I'm like,
right,
yeah, guys, if you're trying to tell me they don't belong together, you're doing a really horrible job.
right. They any type of interaction now is so distant, cold, and kind of robotic. Is you don't have that sense of feel that they are close anymore. Or if they feel like strangers. They don't really have that understanding anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for the sake of Lois. Because if you do show Clark and Diana as they used to be, then you are showing the audience that, oh well, why isn't he with her? So with Death of Superman, the movie, well, I think the producer, he he did want to show them break up. He basically wanted to force a breakup because he wanted that classic status quo back of Lois and Steve. He was going to
You mean
uh
Diana and Steve, right? Because you said Lois and Steve. I could see
well
that,
this
but
this well yeah, I meant the status quo with Lois and Steve of,
okay.
of yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um
Okay.
yeah. Uh so he was going to do like Action Comic 600, when Clark and Diana, their uh, first date is ruined and it kind of goes awkward. He
Oh, wow.
basically wanted to, and it's kind of like, why? Because they've been together for however long they were together, which it seemed like about 2 years or so.
It was they started those movies when the New 52 just started, and then they ended, and then they continued on. I believe when Death of Superman came out, it was even the Rebirth era, so it lasted the entire New 52.
Right. So if you want to say they was together for about 5 years, and then you all of a sudden want to have this story of, well, no, we don't, it's it's not working or something like that. Especially when the movie right before then, they were talking about going on dates again. It's kind of weird with that. You have them talking about dates, you have them very close, and then off screen you have them break up. And even talking about their relationship is like, it was nice, but Clark's total, he just does a total 180 of, he pursued Diana first, so why is he being cold to her and just only thinking about Lois? That is something that, you know again, every time he's with Diana, or it's kind of like they try to just put them in a box of, we can only be friends, and belittle their uh the feelings that they have. He's His characterization changes to be so distant from her, so kind of cold, and it seems like it's Diana that's pining or whatever for him. And
Mhm.
I just don't like that switch. And yeah, with Death of Superman, uh again, we talked about this last week. If she was to be there for the story, for the fight, it wouldn't he wouldn't have died. If he had to die, I mean, she has to be nerfed, like Tomasi pretty much said, that a lot of she has to be nerfed. Um
And that
or
shows someone
she
that fundamentally doesn't understand Wonder Woman.
or it's that uh she doesn't she can't be there at all. The original story. How convenient to have basically the heavy hitters occupied with other things. I think she was off in space somewhere. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, Batman isn't gonna do anything, but he was off
He's
somewhere.
Batman. Yeah, exactly.
You know, the heavy hitters were basically, like I said, occupied, busy with something else. So you do have to bring in these lesser characters, that's not as powerful. So Superman can make that grand sacrifice as the strongest. But
True.
again, that's the story doesn't work like that. It's so contrived because you are using C-list characters that again are less powerful to try to make this statement that Superman is making this sacrifice. But it would have been better if you would have used the heavy hitters. But again, with the heavy hitters, you have to nerf them.
True.
And
And another thing I would have done, honestly, is okay. So, two other things. So, during the fight, we have like his internal dialogue saying, I got to stop this guy. I got to stop this guy. And then at the point when he knows he's going to die, you could have like some internal dialogue of him saying, I think of all the people I leave behind. I think of mom and pa. I think of blah, 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 blah. And then I think of Diana, my immortal beloved. There you go. Homaging that. And you could even have like Wonder Woman's there, she's fighting, but Clark knows that this is like no one he's ever fought before. So legit, before she can be punched by Doomsday, he shoves her to the side to like get her out of the way, so she doesn't get like killed by Doomsday. And then it plays out that exact same way. And then when she comes to his side, she goes, "Why'd you throw me out of the way?" He goes, "I didn't want you to. I didn't want him to kill you. If someone has to die, it should be me."
right, I mean, that very much is way better than having Lois like she just appears out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
In the original story, she's the way it's choreographed in the with the art, it's like she's in the way the whole time. They
That's
having
what
this
Lois
all out
normally is, though.
right.
In the
They
way.
having they're having this all out brawl and she just somehow appears. Then in the movie, she appears and like the last like big blow, she should have died because the blowback of
The
that hit,
shockwave. Oh,
it,
and I'm
it
like, she tosses a rock at at Doomsday. You know he's just going to kill you and go back to beating on Clark. You're solving nothing here.
I mean, they wanted to have this emotional moment, but again, their whole relationship, even with that movie, it's Clark. He says that Lois knows him, she understands him, but yet he's still lying about his identity. And then
Yeah.
when she figures it out, I mean, well, when he tells her, she still doesn't even like the reaction is so it's like secondhand embarrassment to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so just uh it's just like I said contrived. A lot of their interactions of trying to make that relationship work is so just heavy-handed, so hand wavy. You do have to turn your brain off for that relationship
Yeah, a
because
lot of it.
if you truly analyze a lot of the stuff, it's like so childish in middle school, and just this is not how a mature relationship functions. It's very much a fairy tale type thing. Well, yeah, you can have the fantasy, and that's the one thing too, is that they some antis want to call Superman and Wonder Woman a power fantasy. And yeah, sure, because they have the powers and everything. But Lois and
But
Clark is very much a power fantasy because she's a mortal woman with this strong man or whatever. And for her to basically have this control of a powerful man is that if something were to happen to her, he goes berserk or whatever. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that is very much something that a teenage girl kind of would dream of. And
Yeah, and the thing is, if Superman and Wonder Woman is a power fantasy, oh, you mean the fantasy of two people being equally powerful? Hmm?
right, yeah, that is more in a positive sense than the teenage girl having this fantasy of a guy, this powerful guy obsessing over her, and basically anything else doesn't matter, but in a uh, very unhealthy obsession type way.
So he's kind of become super simp, is what you're telling me right there.
Yeah,
But
basically.
and also going on to the whole girl likes the bad boy. That's what Wonder Bat basically is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the SnyderVerse. All right. So here's how I would do this. I'm factoring in the three Snyder movies. So with Man of Steel, she takes the role of Lois. In other words, she's like investigating what's going on with like the Kryptonian ships because she thinks that like there could be another invasion of the gods. She thinks the gods are somehow involved. So then she sees Clark, and the plot of Man of Steel basically plays out, except Wonder Woman it takes the world Lois Lane. But she doesn't tell it. We don't find out she's Wonder Woman until the end of the movie. The way it works is the post-credit scene is she's like she just gets done with like hanging out with Clark and stuff. So then she goes into her apartment, she opens the chest, and there's the armor, and then it plays the music, and then it fades. And then BVS is when he finds out who she is. You could do like the whole teasing thing they did in that movie. That's one of the things I think Zach did really well in that you didn't know that if you didn't watch any of the trailers, you didn't know she was Wonder Woman until she literally showed up, or like in the plane where they say Miss Prince. But she shows up, helps them fight Doomsday, and then but again, she's taken the role of Lois Lane, so they're a couple. But she hasn't necessarily told him who she is yet. And then at the end, he finds out. Obviously, in the final battle, he finds out that, oh yeah, you're just like me. There you go. He sacrificed himself to save her, and she's dead. And then in this one, in Zack Snyder's Justice League, yes, I'm using that Justice League and not the one that does not exist and will never exist. It's basically the idea that because at this point the gods are dead, so she can't go to the gods. So she does the whole warrior's funeral, and then Bruce comes to her, and then Justice League plays off usual, but Bruce tells her there's a chance we can bring him back, and she's like, "Go on." And then the movie plays out like that because honestly, in like the fight in Heroes Park, there's a certain part where it's like she kind of hints that maybe she likes him because of the way she's smiling when she's like holding with the robe. Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, all this stuff. Plus, it would make more sense her calling him Kal-El and calling him the last son of Krypton. Her knowing that his alien name would make more sense. That's the one thing I have about that movie. Why does she know his Kryptonian name? But that's beyond it. I love the way Gal Gadot says Cal. I think that works like superb. And at the end of it, he comes back, he kicks Steppenwolf's ass, like completely like destroys him. And as usual, they do the whole Kal-El thing. They team up, and then at the end of the movie, when they show like all the clips of them like going about their day, Flash is running, Batman's catching some mutants, Aquaman is doing Aquaman stuff, he's swimming, and it shows them like it essentially shows them like flying side by side throughout the clouds, holding hands, kind of like they were in the final days of Superman comic when he's like, I remember the simple things in life, like flying beside the woman I love and the woman that loves me, that sort of thing, where like zooms in on their held hands. Then the movie ends, and then we get like whatever the hell Zach will want to do with Justice League 2 and 3, which I still want very much. So that's essentially how I would do like the movies, in other words.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I would still have it how it was. With Man of Steel, I think that basically put put the seeds of introducing the Justice League members. That could have been a little, done a little bit better.
Mhm.
With especially with Diana, have her, yeah, because these two, mysterious, powerful beings or whatever, they are. They should have been interested in knowing each other. That should have been a plot line of her show her at the end of Man of Steel, and that she's interested in that. Um, well, the one thing that I don't understand is she. Well, I guess it wasn't quite the idea or the plan wasn't written, completely out.
Mhm.
So she did come in a little late. But if we are to rewrite Man of Steel, she does have a cameo throughout the movie, and it is kind of like trying to figure out who this mysterious, powerful man is, and maybe she does think that he is a one of the gods that maybe has survived, that she does think that all the gods are dead, but this powerful man here, he's alive, and she does think he is a god. And especially, of course, she would think that he's like a maybe reincarnation of Apollo, or that he is Apollo, the sun god. Then you have BDS. Um, with her, you finally see her a little bit more, and she is following Clark, and maybe he is investigating her as a journalist, and maybe they do have an interview. Do
Mhm.
the Diana Prince and Clark Kent interview. That's something too that was in the comics. Then she reveals herself to be Wonder Woman, and he dies.
Mhm.
Then here you go with Justice League, and he is revived with that scene of the headbutting
Yeah, that
and
was
the
great.
lasso. That was, again, every time we have a good scene or a good
Mhm.
storyline or a good panel or page or something, it always it can't be perfect at the end. It's always the ending that
I
gets it.
know. It's astounding.
It's crazy. So with this end, yeah, Lois does not appear because, again, you have to nerf the lasso. I mean, the lasso of truth, really. If if she is getting if she is getting within his mind, and she, of course, it's the lasso of truth, and that is his name, Kal-El, and she is, breaking this, um what is it? Is his mind
Mhm.
getting through to him.
It's the
They should
lasso
have
true. Yeah, it should have been
they
instantly,
should have
like,
let it
done.
happen. Yeah, it should have happened, especially with one of the storylines. I think he turns into Doomsday, or it's something.
Alright,
He turns
Superman
into
doomed!
it was one in uh I think there is one fifth with Phil. He does the storyline. I think that was still around the time of 9/11.
Okay.
And with that story, Clark turns into a monster, and Diana, she uses the lasso to tell him, um, you know, fight this. Yeah, and with Super Doom too, to fight this monster, to become yourself again. And a lot of times, yeah, when Clark is possessed, Diana is the one to break him out of that with the lasso. So if you have this scene in the movie as an homage to what's in the comics, she should have been able to break him from his, delirious state.
Mhm.
But of course, you had to have Lois to, calm him down, which again, I don't really like that because it seemed like he's a rabid dog, like a lap dog or something that needed to be coddled. I really didn't like that. So yeah, you completely take Lois out, have Diana help him through with the lasso, keep the tug of lasso scene because that was really good. I mean, um, that's one scene that pretty much stood out for some reason. You have these two powerful beings struggling with a rope that
Yeah.
does, that does kind of, put it in a different perspective. Um, and then at the end, yeah, they do talk. Like we still haven't had a scene where Cavill and Godot's Superman and Wonder Woman talk,
Which
and
we
that was
would have had this gone
in the Flash.
or even before that, we would have gotten that had Warner Brothers not pulled the carpet under Zack's feet. Because there's no way, honestly, we wouldn't have gotten a Superman and Wonder Woman movie. Which I still say, if they do that, that will make money.
Yes, I mean, well, with The Rock, he wanted to do, I guess it was he was influenced or was trying to adapt Kingdom Come, and I think his Boss Logic, that's his name. He showed some concept art, and it was inspired by Kingdom Come. So he has hinted that, throughout for a very long time, that he wanted the producer that was working with The Rock. He was like, well, if it's a Superman versus Black Adam movie, that Black Adam, he wanted to, of course, big himself up as mostly as the most powerful. So it would have been a team up with Clark and Diana and Shazam, Billy. And so that would have been something like, if you had this idea, I know that Black Adam didn't exactly, it wasn't a box office hit.
Well,
but
compared to the rest of DC's movies
well,
that have
yeah,
come out this year, it
compared
actually was. So in a way,
right,
when you think about it, wait a second. The hierarchy of power in the DC universe did change.
it did. And he still had a plan to, give basically the audience and the fans what they wanted. He did bring back Cavill. He was going to have the story that every DC fan seems to want.
Yeah.
And he was going to have the logical team ups. So with that, but I know they wanted to also do Crisis, and even with that too, they could have.
For the SnyderVerse, it was Final Crisis. I think was the basic story of what they wanted to do was Final Crisis.
Yeah, they still could have had that, and still had Superman and Wonder Woman team up, and even with the Flash, that could have been a closure ending for them. Especially with that, with Gunn, changing from Cavill. I mean, I think that really diminished the excitement for DC overall because of how they've treated Cavill.
Oh, and the way they kind of treated Godot, because it's still back and forth on what's going on with Wonder Woman. But when it was like, oh, she is going to come back. No, she's not. Oh, she is. No, she's not. But the Cavill thing, that's when a lot of people checked out. Because honestly, at that point, everyone was like, it's same old Warner Brothers. And nothing is different.
Right. I mean, all that needs to be is that you have closure. And that is something that it could have easily been done, but they wanted to. I mean, the Flash movie, it already tanked, so
hard.
You might as well, to at least get some type of something back from that, just release that alternate ending.
Hashtag release the Flash ending.
Yeah, just release it, because it's either going to help you a little bit or it's not going to do anything, but at least give these characters that have been done, or these actors that have been done so wrong with the management of WB. They have, I mean, completely botched the cinematic universe.
And there's
Um,
honestly, Britt, they're still botching it.
yes, I mean with Blue Beetle,
Which I
it's
watched. I thought it was pretty
it's
fun.
an
I enjoyed it.
yeah, it's pretty entertaining, but it's not groundbreaking or anything. It's not grand,
And
but
also, here's my problem, Britt, with Blue Beetle. It should never have been greenlit when we don't even know who Superman is. The thing about it, what people always bring up when they bring up like obscure characters, they always go out bring up, well, no one knew who the Guardians were, and I always bring up that well, the reason why we got the Guardians movie at all is because Marvel,
Marvel.
that's a hell of a Freudian slip, had built up so much goodwill with the fan base that if they put Marvel on anything, people would go see it. DC
Right.
has never had that. They would have had that if we had released Zack Snyder's Justice League, but that's a discussion for another time. But the thing is that you can't jump to the D-listers unless you have established your A-listers. You never
Mm-hmm.
did.
Right. Right. Well, Blue Beetle was actually supposed to be a DC EU movie.
It's supposed to be
With
streaming, I think.
Yeah, it was supposed to be HBO Max or Max movie, but it was supposed to be with Batgirl to introduce the new I guess Justice League plus the little extended, new generation type of with Supergirl, with Sasha,
I love that they were going
Supergirl.
to try and replace Superman and Batman with Supergirl and Batgirl. Yeah, that's going to work.
Well, actually, it's a lot of rumors of that, but it wasn't gonna actually happen. It was gonna be the buildup of Crisis and everything, but Cavill was gonna have a role. It
Well,
was
the
just
thing is, the original Aquaman ending in The Flash was going to be them at the bar, and then he turns to Flash and goes, "So you mean Supergirl was Superman on a different Earth?"
well, yeah, that was just played up as first having Aquaman drunk. So it was kind
Well,
of like
yeah.
yeah, it was played as a joke. And it really was a joke because they didn't have Cavill yet uh, with a contract. And it was pretty much a contract issue. So they wanted to play it, you know, in a way of he might be back, he might not. They were, basically straddling the fence. So
Okay, that makes sense.
yeah, so I get that played as a joke, but once, like I said, once The Rock brought him back, he was going to have his role, and especially if they would have gone with The Rock's idea, Cavill would have been full front and center,
Yeah,
and they would have had their Superman.
because
So
remember, part of the marketing for Black Adam was The Rock going the most powerful being on Earth is Black Adam. He's not, but okay. But the most powerful being on the universe has been on the sidelines for too damn long, and he's 100% right.
yeah, so that is what that was the plan, of Cavill coming back. Keaton was going to be Batman because they had a Batman Beyond movie in development with bringing back Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. It was basically like, their love story in a sense, which that would have made bank, and that would have been very interesting and unique for it to have basically older Batman and Catwoman, like a love story or something, and introduce Helena Wayne too. That would have been much more interesting than uh well, I'll say Damien is okay, you know. I do like Talia. I do like that relationship, but it's just the fact that Gunn is inspired by Morrison, which he basically just totally screwed over Talia's character. I really don't want to see that. So I hope that that isn't something that he's going to do. But the Batman and Robin, I mean, sure, you can have that. But it would have been more interesting with Helena Wayne.
Me
I
too.
really
I
would
think
have,
so.
yeah, because I think that now Robert Pattinson's Batman is going to have, well, again, rumors that just came out a day or so ago about having Robin introduced,
Mhm.
Dick Grayson. So having two Robins, uh, Dick Grayson and Damian together, I really, that's something it would be interesting to see the two different interpretations, but still having his daughter with Catwoman and then solidifying Batcat would have been more interesting. And seeing
I
an
agree.
older, yeah, and seeing an older Bruce with Keaton. Keaton got uh shafted basically, with this. You had this to bring back a Batman that people. Well, here's the thing. They had when Affleck decided to leave the role, they were actually going to go back to Bale.
Yeah, I
And
also remember, by the way, that in the Flash, they were gonna, if Keaton didn't come back, they were gonna go to Bale and say, "Do you want to come back and be Batman for this?"
right. But of course, he declined maybe, or they, couldn't do it. So then it was asking, I think, I don't think Kilmer was ever asked. I
No.
think it was just, in Clooney. But
Yeah.
so with Keaton, that made much more sense too because of with the idea of doing a Batman Beyond movie. That makes sense.
Hmm.
Um, so with introducing Barbara Gordon too, I wouldn't have done that, but that would have been interesting too. And having Sasha as Supergirl, she they match so perfectly with
Hmm.
Cavill, and to not have that scene either is really disappointing. I mean, why bring on Supergirl? And her whole storyline was basically she felt like she failed because her baby cousin died.
Hmm.
So why not give her, even if she's not coming back, why not give her closure too and have her see Cavill,
I
Superman?
I
You
still
know, her
think. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that why not give her closure to see her baby cousin now grown, you know?
Exactly. Well, I think the lesson of this Warner Brothers, the basic. If I were writing a book about Warner Brothers and the whole chapter in the DCEU is going to be wasted potential. Oh no,
Yes,
ignored potential because they didn't even attempt it.
right.
But there's one more point that I want to add to my thing. An alternate way I would do Man of Steel is with the bus saving scene. I'm going to play a clip of it. It's going to be muted so I don't get a copyright infringement. But so it would essentially be I'm going to explain this as we go along. So he does the whole school bus save, which was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then it turns out this is Diana. Now you may be wondering, Jared, how could that be? Well, what I would do, slightly modify the wonder. In other words, you would have to like. Luckily, this movie came out before the first Wonder Woman movie came out, so you could
Right.
say Wonder Woman. You could essentially say so to understand man's world. Hippolyta sent Diana to man's world, and she like showed up in Smallville and went to school there, and then the whole Clark thing. So that way, she like because you see in the look on that actress's face, it's like you can interpret that as Diana saying he's like me, and then you build into like the whole DCEU thing.
See, that is such an interesting idea. See, the unique take on these characters. Yes, you have it's especially if you want her to be um within man's world for a very long time and that she hasn't been back to her home island for a while. I think in instead of the whole the gods were actually Kryptonians.
Which I
that
didn't necessarily. Wait, no, he didn't say the gods were. He just said Zeus and Ares were.
oh well
Because you could always take that as, well, Zeus is a horn dog. We all know this. And the gods were actually, all the gods are actually half Kryptonian. That's what you could, because most of the gods, if I remember correctly, are Zeus's kids.
well yeah, but I it's still a little it's still a little too ambitious and too much of taken away. You're putting them more in a sci-fi type than the magical fantasy that the god's supposed to be.
Mhm.
So while it's an okay change, but I wouldn't have done it.
Well,
But if you
real quick, I mean to interrupt you, but I just want to add this one little thing to everyone watching that's never really going to criticize this idea. Remember, it was a rejected idea. It was probably like one of those things you're sitting around the writing table and saying, "How about this?" Nah, see, there you go. It was never going to be in the movies. That's my favorite part about covering DC movies. Fans will critique him for ideas that he had that he never implemented.
right, it was well, Diana being a Kryptonian or half Kryptonian was rumored. So it was an idea that kind of it was yeah, in probably in discussions and probably like maybe in the first drafts of a couple of you know
Mhm.
of the movies, but of course ultimately that draft was uh rejected and it was rewritten to where the gods are completely dead.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just an idea. And um but the idea that she does go to Smallville
Mhm.
and live, somehow with one of the Amazons that probably has lived in man's world for
You
a
could do
while.
Hestia or Hestia, however
Hesha.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, however you pronounce your name, but because that's what it did in the new 52.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting story. And actually, that is one thing that I was going to do a couple of years back, was
Mhm.
actually have a young Diana in Smallville.
That would
So,
honestly be pretty interesting. I'm still waiting on your DCEU adaptation, by the way.
oh yes, that is something that I have
But
to get back
what's
to.
actually interesting, you did kind of play with this idea in the storyline where I gotta remember. I don't remember the title of the fanfic, but it's the one where Laura and Cal land in Themyscira.
Twist of Fate.
Yes, that one exactly. You kind of play with that idea where they known each other since they're kids. When you can do in this movie, there could be a line where when they finally confess their feelings, one woman goes, "I have loved you since we were kids."
Yes, I that is just uh an idea that's really I think it's GL JL 8
Mhm.
by Yale Stewart that really inspired to have them as kids because I think that with them as kids, uh, especially with the Amazons, that I like it that they can go back and forth.
Mhm.
I don't really like them stuck on the island that when if they leave they can't go back. I like that they can travel. Let them travel in a very incognito type way. Um, and have especially Diana learn a little bit. She will be sheltered by Hippolyta,
Oh
she
yeah,
will be,
100%.
you know, but let her learn just a little bit and that will make her when if she is to stay on the island until she's around 18, but she has had that experience. She really wants to um leave even more so because she has had that experience, that curiosity that I had a taste, but I really want the whole thing, to really just travel the world by myself, travel, without my mother hovering over me, that I am old enough to now be in this world by myself. And she does. She has a friend or this person that she's connected to, that I've been connected to him since I was a child. And now we've grown up together and we've reconnected. And that that gives them even more so, something to talk about, something to, you know, just have that stronger connection. And I with the story of Twist of Fate, there's something that I wanted to do because I do love that dynamic of Hippolyta. And I feel like Clark's, biological mom, Laura, she doesn't get enough um uh credit,
Mhm.
or like, she's written as a background character. So I
Mhm.
wanted to give her more, especially with the New 52. They did give her, she was a general, she was a
Which I dug
scientist.
so well. It's ironic. Apparently, being a warrior woman is something that's very familiar to the House of El.
Right. So with that, I wanted to play with that because I feel like she would, especially with her being a general and a warrior, she would bond with the Amazon. And I
Mhm.
feel like with Jarrell, with him studying other worlds, and especially Earth, that she would study too, and that she
Mhm.
would find it interesting about the Amazons, that yeah, they are a myth, or they were, labeled as that, but they actually are real, and that your son, grows up to not only knows of the Amazons, he, interacts with the Amazons, but he actually fall in love with an Amazon, and it's the Amazon's princess, you know.
And we could do, by the way, the way I would do this is that after Man of Steel, she goes back to the island to like tell everyone what she knows. She comes back. He doesn't know she's back, and they haven't seen each other. What we could do is that after that kid's moment, she returns to the island. She's taken back. She hasn't seen him for many years. She comes back. He doesn't know she's back. The Doomsday fight happens, and then she swings in. There you go.
Right. This would be so epic. So epic.
That's what
You
we have to
know,
do for a future episode. Just outline an entire movie universe around this.
yes.
That would actually work
It
really well.
Yeah, so with um the SnyderVerse, I would say, yeah, whether it's a comic or, well, with animation now,
They
it's
can.
very it's low budget. I mean, like we said last week or the week prior, WB is broke. So
Which is why I
so
highly doubt they're going to be able to do everything James Gunn wants to do. Because, yeah, he gets to decide the budget, but he's still getting the money from Warner Brothers.
yeah, so well, what little money they
What
can,
little
give.
what pennies they have right now.
Right. So the way Zack Snyder uses, he wants grand. Even if it is animated, it still has to be, high quality.
It's
And that's
and
something that,
here's the thing about Zach. Even if they did a live action, let's say they decide to somehow do it live action, he can get away with cheap VFX because the dude was a painter before he was a film director. He understands if you light a scene well, you can get away with a lot more in the VFX. That's why his stuff always looks gorgeous.
right. I mean, it's when you have that natural talent to, basically just do what you can with what you have, yeah, it's gonna turn out beautiful. So exactly. He Even if it is just a very pathetic budget, I believe that he can make it work, but it feels like it still wouldn't just hit the quality that it should be. And it's kind of like, so what's the point?
Well,
you know.
also if they somehow get the whole licensing the Snyderverse to Netflix, Netflix takes up the production costs, and we get live action.
Yeah.
Because
So
they'll do it. And if it's for Zack Snyder, let me put it this way, he's getting not one, but two universes, plus his Norse mythology series. He has basically his own Star Wars, which looks incredible. By the way, I'm rapping today with my
Rebel
shirt.
Moon.
Yes, thank you. And then Army of the Dead. Netflix has basically said, here's your corner, do whatever the hell you want. I don't care. Just do it. We'll throw as much money as you want.
Money.
So it's like, I'm just like, come on, guys, you have this opportunity to do stuff with DC, and you know this is popular. It's really ironic how Zack's movies success with DC mirrors the New 52, and that everyone likes to say was a failure, but when you look into the finances, it's really not. Even, did you see this? Diane Nielsen, the former head of DC, even said, yeah, they should have gone with what Zack wanted.
Right. That is something, yes. It's very ironic that, you know, even though it was two different, with what Zack was doing was Superman was basically with the post-crisis type status quo,
But
you know.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah,
I was fine with that as long as they get like a really good story. I'm like, okay, I can see what they're doing. At least he gave us a realistic view of Superman. That's
yeah,
what Cavill is.
yeah. So with even though with the different status quos, um, both ended up very controversial because what with New 52, it brought the characters basically in realism and back to their roots,
Mm-hmm.
their actual roots. So Superman was more the golden age. He was more the champion of the oppressed and the man of the people. He was more um, a rebel. You know, he was more he was tougher,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't a hothead. I really don't like it when people think that he had like this roguish type
Yeah,
attitude. He
one
was
of my
just tough.
co-hosts. Yeah, one of my co-hosts said, "Well, he was an a-hole," meaning he wasn't like attacking the New 52 Superman. But the thing is, I'm like, was he though?
Yeah, he was a bully basically to the corrupt. I
And
mean, you would
I've
want
read
that.
early New 52. He was pretty much post-crisis Superman, but younger.
Well, he was, but wasn't. I mean,
Mm,
again, it's all about the core of the character,
true.
you know. And so, if you believe that he was still, in a sense, post-crisis, it was because his core parts were still there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing. Whether it's golden age, silver age, bronze age, post-crisis, pre-crisis, post-crisis, New 52, these the characters still have certain ideals that remain consistent. And that is one of the things, is that, yeah, he was more golden age, more tough, more, bullying the corrupt, but he was
Mm-hmm.
still kind-hearted. He was
Mm-hmm.
still not so much of a Boy Scout in just like the um overly nice pushover uh carpet type,
Mm-hmm.
rug type way. He was just a nice person still. Um with Diana, even though her world of the Amazons were actually based on the real, mythology of the Amazons, she
Mm-hmm.
still maintained, and she was more of a warrior in a sense of she didn't take any nonsense. She wasn't a happy. It was a tweet that said that New 52 Wonder Woman was like one dimensional and she was a killer.
You obviously
It's
did.
like,
I'm like, you obviously didn't read the books.
right, you didn't. And well, she also said that Zeus forced himself on Hippolyta, and it's like, no, the main conflict of the
Read the
Wonder
book.
Woman book was that they had an affair. Like it was a mutual.
In the
It was
first issue, it's like in the first volume they show it was pretty consensual.
right. So, I mean, a lot of times Twitter X they lie for likes. So, that's gonna be that.
Twitter lies.
But
Did you see that, by the way, real quick, that CBR put out an article talking about how comics Twitter is very toxic? And I'm like, they got someone saying it.
right. But then when that was even called out, a lot of them saying like, well, CBR is already in like its own eternal conflict because a lot
True.
of their articles are now being generated by AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, well, CBR has always had like issues with very biased writers.
Mm-hmm.
And the same guy that wrote that article, he was very childish with it when he would try to criticize Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
He called it playground, childish, and stuff like that. So he's very rude, but that article did have a point of Twitter. It's kind of like he was like the pot calling the kettle black. And, he was being a hypocrite. But it was true that Twitter is so controversial, so toxic, and just this hateful type of commentary and spread so many, I mean, lies, spread like wildfire. But the truth is always ignored. And that is something that's so dangerous just in general. So with how the SnyderVerse and New 52, they yes, they were flawed. They weren't perfect, but neither was Post Crisis. If Post Crisis was this perfect everything that everyone loved, it wouldn't have been DC wouldn't have needed a reboot. And sales and everything just wouldn't have been in the gutter how it was.
Exactly.
So and with the SnyderVerse, yes, the character Snyder's ideas, they weren't for everybody. They weren't. It was more realism. It was dark in the sense of the realism, but it was entertaining. It was ambitious.
Plus, it was selling. That's the key thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: when I show people the actual versions, like the Ultimate Edition of BVS and then Zack Snyder's Justice League, and in fact, I've had Snyder haters that I've shown the Snyder cut, and they've been like, "Okay, you know what? This is pretty solid." And then I tell them, "Isn't it kind of funny how the version that most people like of these movies is the version where Zack goes crazy, where it's all Zack?"
Yeah,
that's what you have to. That's what these people have to really get. It's that with these movies, are they 100% accurate to the comics? They're pretty close. I'd say 85%, but there's a lot of stuff that in the comics that does not translate to any movies whatsoever. Like, say, for instance, Mxyzptlk as a villain doesn't translate well to live action movies. What Snyder did is he managed to take these characters and make them as translatable to movies as possible for this audience.
Yes, because the general audience, they basically love the bombastic, the dark, gritty type thrillers. So even though the MCU was more family friendly, more, but they've had 10 years ahead of DC to establish this sort of their world, their base. They've had time to. So DC had to mold their own individuality. And with that, Snyder went for for more realism.
Plus the fact, when people complain about it being dark, I'm like, have you read DC at the time?
Right. DC is very dark,
DC is the darker publisher. That's the way it's supposed to be. But I noticed a lot of these people that critique it, they're stuck in the Silver Age.
Because a lot of I think that especially with Superman, it's like his character has been so watered down to just the smiling, save a cat out of the tree, the red trunks, bright colors, uh, Boy Scout, just that. But that's not what the character is.
No, and 100%. And I said the number one moment that showed me that Zach gets Superman is in BVS when the world is critiquing him and like saying about how he could be a threat. And Zach cuts that with a montage of Superman still saving people, because that's 100% Superman. No matter what humanity says about him, he will keep moving on and keep saving people and keep being of service because he was raised to protect humanity.
Right. And that is pretty much the story that should be of Superman, that he should be criticized. He shouldn't be, which sometimes they show that, but a lot of times it's kind of like they gloss over a lot of the conflicts. So for him to be easily accepted, no. He needs to have that constant people, questioning him. He needs to have that where not everything goes as he would want or as it seemed like it should, because the story becomes predictable. And again, the greatest DC story, the one that everyone turns to, that everyone pretty much knows, that has gotten so many people into DC, is Kingdom Come.
Yep.
It's a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale. And it is dark. It is gritty. It's a thriller.
Most of the stories that people hail in terms of DC are the darkest stories ever. So I'm like, excuse me for DC, for Zach going with what's sold.
Right. And Kingdom Come, it is a thriller. But at the end, it does have those very light moments. And at the end, it's for a brighter future. And for a brighter, happier ending. And that's what you're supposed to have. You're supposed to have these conflicts. You're supposed to have these the trials for these characters, these for them to, the obstacles for them to go through. So you can again invest in these characters. So you can really go through the journey with them. And then you have the reward of a happy ending. And
exactly.
No, your happy ending shouldn't be predictable. And that's another thing why I don't like Lois and Clark, because
it is predictable 100%.
It's predictable because
I kid you not, I was reading the first volume of War World. I flipped through it. I see Lois in danger, and I'm like, so he's gonna save her.
Right. And just like even My Adventures, the story, that show, it is about, I guess it is in a point more of Lois, but it's the fact that from the first episode, it's kind of like they instantly put them together. Like they didn't even know each other, but for like a day or a week, and they already trying to say like I love you and stuff like that. It's like, no, that's not how relationships work. And even with the conflict that they try to give them within that show, it's glossed over like the very next episode, or not even brought up. And but it's supposed to be a rom-com. I know that. But even animes that are geared towards that have better storytelling within that. But this is, when they try to give Lois and Clark conflict, it's it shows the cracks in that relationship and shows how it's not meant to be. And and that is when, like I said, they write themselves in a corner and they have to gloss it over because now you see, oh no, this isn't the what they want to say, like the golden standard, or they want to say like this is the relationship that is better than everyone else's, because it's really not. It's a lot of different relationship, whether it's Superman and Wonder Woman, even Batman and Catwoman. They go through, they are written as very toxic, but they are dealing with their trauma together though. So they're
Plus,
going through that.
the Snyder story of Batman was going to be they were married, but they got divorced when Batfleck went crazy and started killing people.
Yes, it's that type of trauma that, you know, you go through things as an individual and then you have somebody else and they go through it with you. And then you learn and you teach each other, you learn together, you learn from each other. And that's when the audience invests and have a more satisfying conclusion, or, you know, a satisfying relationship. And it becomes more real. But this relationship is just based on just old, outdated cliches that are accepted because it's very predictable. And when somebody say that it's like stakes in that relationship because you have the sense of like Lois dying or something, it's like, yeah, that's all it is that you feel like because she's mortal, she's gonna die. So he has to save her. But when you have that constant um, conflict or that constant story going on, you know, okay, well, even though she's captured, even though she's on the brink of death or something, he's gonna save her because she can't die. So where truly are the stakes? But
Exactly.
with
There are none.
but with Superman and Wonder Woman, these two, you basically have to continue on with that. Why are these two together? You have to keep that um that story going of, okay, their worlds seamlessly um joined together. But let us see that. So with the first volume of their joint book, they had you have the gods with the Kryptonians and, you know, the villains or whatever, and they put their worlds together to stop Apollo from, you know, having a conflict with Clark, and then he um basically powers up Zod. You know, that is the world. What are the stakes with Superman and Wonder Woman is the entire world, whether
Mhm.
it's against them, it might be even against them, or like what Diana said, if we are worried about each other, you know, then we forget about our job.
Mhm. Our whole
And
job is to be Superman and Wonder Woman.
yeah, so if we forget about that, then we've messed up. So that means that, yeah, that's where the conflict comes from and where we shouldn't be together. And even in Super Doom, she says that to Lois too. She says, I think Lois asks her, did they have like this agreement about saving the world or something? And Diana's basically like, yeah. And we didn't have to say it, but we just know that we're going to put the world first, and we're doing it together because we have an understanding.
Mhm.
And with that and as long as we have that understanding that we are strong together to do our jobs. And that is just so real as a relationship, is that, yeah, you will make sacrifices together or as individuals, and you will understand that sacrifice that you
Amen
make.
to that. Amen to that. So I got one more story. And by the way, that was awesome. And I think, if I'm interpreting this correctly, it sounds like Britt's a Snyder fan.
Yeah, I'm very interested to with um the whole ending, especially because he rewrote it to I guess, well, the kid that Lois was supposed to have will still be the next Batman,
Mhm.
but the one storyline that I really wanted to see was when Diana becomes the goddess of war, or within her that
Her dream and she's
nightmare.
stabbing Superman.
Yeah, I really wanted to see that
Yes.
play out.
Me too.
That
I really want to see that. Justice League: The Last Ride. I just have to make sure. Okay, I have two more stories. Okay, Justice League: The Last Ride. So this story, this is one of my favorite Elseworlds Justice League stories. So the team is disbanded, and because of like fighting Apocalypse and Martian Manhunter and such. But what I would do with this storyline is so everyone's like not talking to each other or anything, except for like Wonder Woman's the glue that brings them all back together. There's like this threat. Let's say there's like no, I just changed it. I got a better idea. So no one's heard from each other in many, many, many years. Let's say like Clark and Lois broke up because he was too distant because of what happened with the Justice League. Let's go off of that. So then Bruce comes to Clark one day and he goes, "Listen, dude, we kind of need your help with anything like that." And then Clark says, "I'm sorry, I can't. I don't have time for you, Bruce, right now." And then Bruce goes, "It's Diana." And then Clark goes, "Go on." She's been kidnapped by Darkseid, and he's like, "Okay, let's go." So it turns out Darkseid has been captured. Darkseid's been captured. Jeez. Diana has been captured and turned into a female Fury. And this way, what this does is Clark has to fight Diana sort of in the same way in Sacrifice. It doesn't end with them
killing.
yes,
Anyway,
exactly.
yeah.
But he uses the lasso, kind of like in the Justice League versus Teen Titans movie, to like unfog her. And this is sort of showing, because Diana has said multiple times that Clark is her immortal center. This shows that.
Yes, that is very good. I know that I think that was the first issue when they do kind of come back together, and Clark and Diana are the only ones that hug.
Yeah,
It's
there
kind of
you
like
go.
it's like they try to be kind of distant and try to have that tension, but then they can't help but hug and like basically apologize to each other for not being able to talk to each other. And Diana is like, she's worried about him. He looks tired, and she just the first thing she says is like, you need to rest. And that was something that is kind of like these little moments really speak volume of their relationship. It's kind of like no matter how whatever writer try to distance them, it always come back in some type of small way or big way. And I thought that that was so good. I didn't like the first thing that they had. Of course, they tried to put Lois in. I don't know why, like for since Rebirth, and well, Jeff Johns, he did say that during Rebirth, Lois was supposed to be like one of the characters that they do give a main role to. So I'm guessing they are still trying to do that in certain ways, which still doesn't work, especially because she has nothing to do and shouldn't have anything to do with the Justice League.
Yeah.
Um, and it's still trying to distance Clark and Diana, but still, in some way, a writer is kind of like it's temptation in a sense that they have to have a moment with Clark and Diana anyway. So without throughout the whole story, it was okay. Uh,
I
I
dug it.
like I like your interpretation better because
Thank you.
yeah, it should be. We just really need a Wonder Woman story where she is the leader that and that when she if she is captured, if she's on the brink of death or something like that, that it really shows her role, not so much as a den mother, because I don't like that either, how she has to basically like these grown men, she's basically like a mother to them,
Yeah, I
except for
know.
Billy.
That was my one part in the book where she's like telling Clark, "Will you guys, Clark and Bruce, when they're arguing, will you guys stop and act like adults?" I'm like, no. But with the way I did it, she becomes the lightning bolt, if you will, or the cornerstone that brings the Justice League back together.
Yeah, she's basically like that inspiration. I would both Clark and Diana should be the inspiration for the Justice League, but she as the female lead, as that inspiration,
Mhm.
sh
As the queen.
yeah, she needs that type of story with I believe it was death metal
Mhm.
or in the Infinite Frontier
All right,
when
speaking
she
of death
died.
metal, by the way, real quick. There you go. But continue on.
With she died, and
Mhm.
it was kind of like they nobody actually mourned her.
Or at least we didn't
It
see it. They were like, "Oh, she's lost somewhere." They said it in like a throwaway thought box, and I'm like, Wonder Woman died. You don't give it a thought box.
right, like see when she died during Perez run, you saw Clark, he was devastated. It was a panel where he was saying like he was inspired by her. He made a speech, and he also basically said that he almost fell in love with her,
Mhm.
and how he basically missed her. And that is something that this current era is very much missing, that these real relationships, because you want to emphasize on, or this relationship threatens that relationship, whatever the dynamic, you belittle it, and the emotion isn't there. So when she died in Infinite Frontier, the character is kind of like, she died, she'll come back, or maybe, or something like that, or it wasn't really even a thought, and then they moved on until what it was, Wonder Woman 750, when she
Mhm.
came back. And still, even that, I do like the hug that Conrad had,
There you
when,
go.
because it did seem very emotional. I did like that, but it still just missed just a little bit more emotion that we know they could have.
Yeah. So going on for that, the reason why the way I would read you death metal, everything stays the same until the end. That's the theme of this episode. But at the end, they send her back, so she returns. But they say something is missing, so we're gonna send you with someone. So the world goes back, and Wonder Woman turns behind. Here's a whoosh behind her, and it's New 52 Clark. And like as a parting gift, they gave her back her Clark, her memories. Everything is back to the way it is. And you can have, again, that emotional reunion. Or the way we could also do this, if you want to keep everything the way it is, we go earlier in the story before the final battle. Clark essentially goes to Diana and says, "Thank you for bringing us back together. You're all you always inspire me to be a better version of myself." And then it plays off.
Yes, something like that. I really do like, for New 52 Superman, they should have kept him maybe as a spirit,
Mm-hmm.
maybe had him, like I said, ascend,
Mm-hmm.
paying a debt for the gods or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that his character, because the current version of Superman right now, until the Philip Kennedy, the
Mm-hmm.
Action Comics writer right now, uh, War World, he did, you know, that was a good storyline.
I love I've only read the first volume, but I love War World Saga so because he did something new with Superman.
Yeah, you know, freeing the slaves, that was very in what Superman is supposed to do. He is supposed to go out into other worlds and go saving people, go adventuring, learn, and, you know, especially he's the son of a farmer, but a son of a scientist too.
Mhm.
Farmer and scientist basically mixed together of you experimenting, of you creating, of you researching. So yes, he is supposed to go out in the world, in other worlds, and go experiment, go um, uh, learn of different cultures, of different, you know, alien cultures, of these different dimensions too. So if, but again, he's confined with Metropolis and Lois, and it's just so much of the same. Any type of potential to do different, to something epic with Superman is always cut down and belittled because he has to go back to the status quo of the Daily Planet, of Metropolis, of Lois. Because when, if you, because those things are so outdated, unnecessary, and just useless. You know, with the Daily Planet, the world of technology, people are using their phones, people are using social media to get news out. So the Daily Planet isn't really necessary unless it's kind of like a just a home based type. Uh, um, while he do freelance, that he does have a company that he's working for,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still basically like free. He's a freelance type foreign correspondent, or just this uh, just a journalist that's world, you know, that's going out in the world and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and bring that back to the Daily Planet and do like a blog or do like a column like that, you know, to
Or
update
like they
the
did in the new 52 with him and
52 and
Cat.
have, yeah. Um, with Lois again, she's not necessary. Um, if she isn't the love interest, for sure she is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's known. New 52 showed a lot of that. First, he won't go crazy or evil
Mm-hmm.
if he's not with her. She doesn't have a role if she isn't the love interest. Whether she's not the love interest at all or the wife,
Mm-hmm.
she just doesn't have, she doesn't really have anything interesting. They tried to, but nobody's interested if she isn't the love interest. And that is why Clark and Diana are so distant now, is because
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to force Lois's role. And it's like, again, if you have to do that, then there's something wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It's
Um,
like my one problem with Philip Kennedy Johnson is when he did the whole kinky thing with the Warworld suit, and I called him out on this on Twitter. He didn't respond because I'm a relative nobody on Twitter, but someone responded saying, "Oh yeah, we have to know this because that's like how you keep the relationship alive." And I put in the comments, if you have to resort to that to keep the relationship alive, I think there's something wrong with the relationship.
I mean, he pretty much took away the significance because it was a torture suit. I mean, it was like bloody with slaves, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So why would you want to basically, for the Twitter likes, for the, you know, um, if he wanted to bring back the suit as like a uh, reminder of the storyline,
Mm-hmm.
you could have had like a very honorable ceremony or something, or some type of
Or
honorable talking about it
or
with
you
the
know how Bruce has those little pods in the Batcave that have all the different uniforms. He could have had something like that in the Fortress of Solitude. That's just that, so to always remember what happened on Warworld.
Right. But instead, of course, he has to try to, and I think the reason why he did it was because so many Lois fans were complaining about her not being in the saga. So
What is she gonna do?
right. So he tried to please them in a sense of pretty much that's all they want is for him um to have the romance, but in a sense of he goes overboard with it, and it's kind of like it's unnecessary to me, especially when you have to try to have like clickbait panels and pages. Yes, you want to have people interested in your stuff to buy your books, but with that suit, I just feel like he cut down the significance because it was about the slaves, it was about the people who died, it was bloody, and you turned it into a kink suit. I mean, uh,
Well,
that's not exactly what you would want to do. And he did, and also a lot of people on Twitter were talking about that like that too. So his idea came from Twitter. And that is another problem, is that stop getting ideas from Twitter, because even if you do get the idea, these people aren't actually going out to support the books. They just want
they've
their,
admitted it too.
yeah. I mean, even posting the pirating sites links on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
So stop doing that. Stop just taking Twitter like as it's the gospel, because it's not. It was another writer who actually called out and said Twitter is only like maybe not even 5% of the consumer. And yes, with the difference between Twitter and Instagram, and even I see that, especially with having the Instagram is
Mm-hmm.
a so much bigger platform because it is a visual platform. And you can see that even with DC, their Instagram page I think has like 13 million followers, but their
Mm-hmm.
Twitter only have like 5 million. So you can see the differences and the audience engagement. And I think they had a Robin roundup when
Mm-hmm.
you had to vote for what
Round robin.
yeah, that um vote for what book to publish, and you can see the significant difference. But with what was voted for on Instagram was voted on Twitter. And it's like, okay, so if Twitter obviously is a very small amount of difference between Instagram, if you want to have like a consumer audience, fan engagement to really keep track of it, use Instagram, not
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, you know.
Exactly.
So yeah, a lot of DC's problems are coming from listening to Twitter. And with going back to the story, um, just just stop with the undercutting of all
Exactly.
these wonderful ideas, these stories that can truly change perspectives, that can truly speak to different audiences, that can truly, bring in new fans. And that's something that DC does not have anymore. They do not have new fans coming in.
No, they
Like,
absolutely
yes,
do not.
New 52 was very controversial. It was, but it was only controversial because because it did away with the post-crisis status quo. That's it. it wasn't controversial in the sense of, yes, it some of the decisions for the characters, some of them were good, some of them were bad, some of them were, a mixed bag. But they did what they had to do to keep the comics line, and
Mhm.
also save the comic industry as a whole, you
Yeah,
know.
it did.
So yeah, while it is controversial, you might not agree, but it did its job. And that is something that DC has to take in consideration with the decisions that they make now too. Because if you just want to stay at a very middle road, you're not going to win either way. And you're definitely not winning now, because not only are your comics, yeah, they are doing the Dawn of DC relaunch right now.
Which is not that bad. Which, when they didn't interrupt it with night
Night
terrors,
Terrors.
it was pretty good, honestly. Except for like some of the Clark and Lois stuff. Obviously, I'm not gonna like that, but overall, I liked what they were doing. And then when it gets good, nope, we're gonna take a month off for night terrors. I'm like, wait, what?
2 months, actually.
2 months? I'm like, that's even worse. I'm like, what the hell are you guys doing? The stories just got good.
Right,
It, it
right.
it's
The
it's
the thing
hilarious.
is, um, the thing is, DC right now, they are so middle road, and kind of that they can't support ongoing.
Mm-mm.
Notice that a lot of the current books are just minis or maxis.
And even
And
Johnson, when he's talking about his Superman stories, he goes, "This is the first of this arc." So now they're just calling them arcs now instead of like the overall story. Wow.
right, it's just or seasonal type thing, or seasons type
Mm-hmm.
thing. And even with him, he's trying to do this like family tree. He wants to do like this whole Superman like family, with even introducing descendants and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And his the super twins, it's kind of like that kind of stuff. It it really all depends on the execution. And right now, especially with the super twins, they are so bland.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really stand out as much. Yes, they are from war world, but you want to now put them in a box of like just normal Earth kids. And yeah, you want them to transition to a normal life, but not too normal, where it is the same thing of how Clark was, how he grew up. He grew up very normal and kind of starting to become bland and stuff. When you have these kid characters, they need to be a little bit extraordinary. And a lot of the kids that DC is introducing now to have a legacy character, whatever, and to make like their main characters a little bit older.
Trinity.
Right. Oh, Trini, I no. She's just, well, uh her main reasoning of existing was to complete the Trinity having kids.
Mm-hmm.
And that just still is a very built on sand, you know, reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
I Especially when Diana isn't established. She isn't established herself as a character. With from New 52 to Rucka's Rebirth to Infinite Frontier, or whatever in between that, to the
Mm-hmm.
Infinite Frontier with Conrad introducing Siegfried and all of that. She doesn't really have anything established. And where she lives, she's went to um, and no actual relationship either. She doesn't have anything like that in her supporting cast either.
It's significantly like skeleton.
right. And even the Amazons, they really don't have a solid bond. So why would you introduce yet another, basically another Wonder Girl, especially with Yara,
Hmm.
because
You
she
just
was,
introduced Yara, and she was actually really cool.
yeah, but she was even downplayed because they didn't understand the Brazilian culture. She's supposed to be, I mean, you should have had a Brazilian writer and artist to handle this character. But I believe that it was said that that was actually rejected because of how they wanted her to be. So it's kind of like DC again. You have these
Hmm.
ideas and undercut them. Um,
That's DC's whole publication history.
right. Tim or Jace Fox.
Oh
I
God, that
I just
thing.
think I just think that with him, well, I really don't know that whole dynamic with them with his family. Just know Lucius Fox by name, but that could have been something interesting. I
What you
think
have to
his
understand,
sister.
Britt, they made him up because he was not a because originally they were going to do Luke Fox Batwing become Batman, but when Dan DiDio was fired, they didn't want to give him any royalties because DiDio was a co-creator of Luke Fox, so they created Jace Fox,
Oh well, that explains a lot of why his character really didn't have much character.
and they
Um,
basically made him a clone of Batman.
and then with John, he is the only thing that he has really is, and even Tom Taylor, he admitted that announcing his bisexuality was a stunt. It was a gimmick.
And I love where he even says that he's more heroic because he doesn't like violence and all that stuff, and I'm like, you don't understand superheroes then, dude.
I mean, Clark doesn't like violence too much either, but if you have to go
He's still
punching,
gonna throw down if you come at him.
yeah, he's still gonna throw some hands. Some, even Diana, she sometimes is a pacifist, but she's a warrior of peace. But yeah, she'll, you'll have a boot print, in if you get on her bad side, or
If
if
you
you
get on
if
her
you
bad
tempt her too
side,
much,
if you get on
you
the
know.
bad side, you may not have certain organs anymore. You may end up a eunuch, in other words.
Right. So, I mean, sometimes you have to throw hands. So
Hmm.
that's what anybody, even in the real world, that's what we do. So, I mean, for him to think that he's doing something unique with John, he's really not.
He's
He
definitely not.
is, and just John as a character is just, he doesn't have a place because his history is so just messed up. He contradicts post crisis. He contradicts New 52. Um, he just shouldn't exist
Hmm.
beyond if he was in Elseworlds.
Hmm.
Trinity, she shouldn't exist either because she isn't for Diana. She is for the Trinity. This idea of, and the Trinity idea comes from Kingdom Come, and it was just with that, it was the ending and for a new beginning of these old friends, you know, uh, after everything that they went through, they are reconciling and they are building their friendship again, and they're just coming together as a family, as Diana Clark are together as a couple, and Bruce is the godfather or uncle. That's the dynamic that it should be, but the execution of trying to make the Trinity truly a thing is is so ham-fisted and so um shallow, and it doesn't actually work with, especially with Rebirth, how they tried to have the book, but it just seemed like it couldn't find its footing, and the dynamics just weren't together, not only
Hmm.
because that Superman wasn't their Superman in the first place, but because it's just not a concept that can continue on how they want it to.
But yeah, 100%. And that's a good topic for a future episode, because we're about 2.5 hours in. All good stuff, by the way, because everyone loves the show, which again, I'm like, wow, we really have a hit on our hands. So on that note, let us know how you guys would fix any of our stories whatsoever. Or if you guys have any other stories you want to see us fix, maybe we can do a part 2 of this. But in the meantime, Britt, you have any story updates for the fine people at home?
Right. So I just uploaded chapter 4 of You Have My Heart, which is I'm very proud of. Chapter
I like
5
it.
is chapter 5 is a work in progress. I am giving a few tweaks of the Athens story, and especially with Donna, introducing her, and a few more one shots, which one that I can say is actually going to with Frank Miller's universe.
Ooh.
With John and Laura. And yeah, that's very interesting of how to write them, especially the family dynamic that we didn't really get.
Yeah, we never really did, because we never got the 4 of them together. That's the thing.
Yeah, the artist, Grandpa, he actually did draw sketches of Diana in her queen, attire. And I just, when I saw that post, it was about a year or so ago, the idea was in my mind, but now that I'm kind of like going back to it, yeah, I wanted to go ahead and write it. So that is something that I'm working on, and that should be probably next week, by the end of the week. Yeah.
Super excited. I always love updates when they do inevitably come.
Yeah.
That's a little ding right there. That's a little ding. But let us know what other topics you guys want us to see in terms of Comics League. Well, obviously we have this. We have Indie Wednesday. I'm going to talk to an indie creator. Friday, we're going to talk about which superheroes we think could fit in the Christopher Reeve Superman universe. And we're going to be talking about Alita Battle Angel for movie night. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe, share the show with all your other SuperWonder fans, or any Clovis fans or WonderBet fans that you want to expose them to logic. So on that note, stay woke, everyone, and we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.